Okay, hi everybody, welcome. My name is Lisette. I'm a caregiver to my husband who is a GNE myopathy patient and also a volunteer moderator for the GNE myopathy caregiver and care partner Facebook community page. Today, I'm very excited to introduce Carol, who is going to be talking about a topic that many of us will find useful. It will be the first presentation for the speaker series of 2023. And before I continue, I want to remind you that today's presentation will also have a space for you to do questions and answers. If you have any question, please feel free to send it in the box of the questions, the Q&A, and we'll read it after the presentation. Only the question, your name will be kept anonymously. So before we start, let me tell you more about Carol, who, by the way, I'm very happy to introduce. Carol has been an active member of the NDF community since 2015. In addition to the 8 years she served on the board of directors, she has been involved in the creation of patient-facing programming and has led patient and caregiver support groups covering a variety of topics, including grief and loss, adjusting and implementing self-care plans, adopting effective coping skills, and helping manage stressors that come along with having a chronic progressive disease. Carol has facilitated podcasts on stress management, promoting and supporting wellness, problems with ableism in our culture, and breaking the taboo of disability. She also led presentations on managing re-entry anxiety as we gradually emerge from the global pandemic and fostering emotional wellness for ourselves and our families with neuromuscular diseases. Additionally, as NDF's Emotional Wellness Director, Carol provides confidential one-on-one sessions, needs assessments, referrals, and recommendations to support services for GNE myopathy patients and their families through NDF's Emotional Wellness Program. Carol Gelbard received a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology at UC Davis and a master's degree in social work at UCLA. She has more than 20 years of experience performing individual, family, and group therapy in hospitals, the schools, and private practice settings with people of all ages. So let's begin. Hi, Carol.
Thank you for that nice introduction, Lisette. And for those that don't know me, I'm really excited to be here today. This is a topic that's really, I think, useful, and I'm excited to talk about it. And for those that don't know me, I wanted to talk a little bit about my background and why I got involved with NDF. I also had some cousins who had GNE myopathy. So I saw this progressive disease. I saw the stress it was putting on their families. And I really felt compelled to get involved with NDF years ago. And I joined the board. And that's before NDF has become such a large organization. At that time, it was very small. And we were really trying to encourage researchers to look at this disease and try to figure out what we can do to get more research going. And I'm just really pleased to see it grow over the years. Obviously, we don't have a cure yet. There's a lot of balls in moving in that direction. There's not an effective treatment, but there's a lot of plans to hopefully get closer to that. So for those that haven't seen the history of the organization, it's been a pleasure to see it grow. We still have a lot of work to do, but then I also decided to transition into this role of supporting patients on their journey and provide more supportive services, because I also understand that living with this disease can be very stressful. And until there's an effective treatment or a cure, I think it's really important that we support the patients and the family members and the loved ones on this journey. So today I was excited to talk about this because I use nervous system regulation a lot in my own practice, working with my own patients. And I think a lot of this might be very useful to the GNE myopathy community. So the title of this presentation is called Regulating and Recharging Our Nervous System, Tools to Nurture Our Bodies and Our Minds. Well, I was kind of thinking recharging. There's so many different words you could use, like restoring, re-energizing, rejuvenating, resetting. So whatever resonates with you, which makes sense to you, feel free to use. Because after I made that title, I'm like, there's so many different ways to look at this. So why am I not here? So we're going to talk about during this presentation, this is what we're going to cover, and it will be about hopefully 35 minutes, and there'll be a time in the presentation I might have people self-reflect, and then we'll, as Lizeth said, have a Q&A after. So first of all, we're going to talk about what is nervous system regulation, and then we're going to also explore what things influence our ability to self-regulate and our nervous system. And then we're going to look at how to raise your own self-awareness by identifying your own symptoms of when you're experiencing dysregulation. And then I hope we can have each person look at identifying strategies and hopefully implementing new strategies to deal with stress in your own environment and your own circumstance. So ultimately, by managing stress and can help optimize your overall emotional and physical well-being. So that's what we're going to cover today. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about what is nervous system regulation. Well, nervous system regulation is really the ability for people to manage stress and move flexibly between stressors that occur in their environment. And this means whenever we have a change or a stressor, like a stressful situation, how we adapt, how we adjust so we're not completely overwhelmed. And clearly, when our nervous system is regulated, we are able to feel balanced, we're able to feel a sense of safety, and we're able to manage whatever stress hopefully comes our way. So it's super important to learn how to manage our nervous systems. Now, I'm going to talk about the parts of the nervous system that gets impacted. So we have the sympathetic nervous system, which for many of you probably already know, this is our body's fight or flight freeze response. Now, this is designed to protect us in case there's a threat in our environment, so our body knows how to respond. So what happens is when there's something threatening in our environment that we need to protect ourselves, our body goes quickly into high gear, our heart rate goes up, our breathing increases, we might have sweaty palms, our senses get heightened because that is designed to protect you. You'll feel an increase in adrenaline, your digestive system will slow down, and you are actually getting ready for what is the most important thing, is to protect yourself. So the sympathetic nervous system is there to protect you. Now, what happens when the threat's gone and your body recognizes the threat is gone, your parasympathetic nervous kicks in. And that's the brake pedal to say, hey, slow down. The threat's not there anymore. Your nervous system can kind of bring it down and get to a more balanced place. You recognize the threat's gone and you can return to homeostasis. Now, these are the things that impact our nervous system. And not everyone's nervous system is the same. Some people have more activated nervous system. So the things that kind of impact your nervous system is obviously related to a little bit about your home environment and how your caretakers, family members responded to you earlier in life when as far as attachment's concerned. So the first thing is, how did your caregivers respond when there was a threat of safety? How did they protect you? How did they soothe you when there was anything stressful happening in your environment? Did they create a sense of safety and protection for you and comfort you? The second thing is, were your caregivers attuned to your emotions? Did you feel seen? Did you feel heard? Were they able to protect you and be attuned to your emotions? And also, were they able to comfort you and soothe you when you were distressed? Did they help you learn how to self-soothe? Were you able to be comforted when you were upset or emotional? And also, when we talk about expressed delight, did they take delight in things that energized you and that made you feel good? And lastly, did they support you in your own self-development, into your, whatever things that you were passionate about, your goals, and your own personal self-development and things that you were passionate about? Obviously, nobody does all these things all the time, but if you had enough of this in your environment, hopefully that's helped lay the foundation to have, a nervous system that can handle distress. Not everybody's had all these things. So you might recognize, hey, I had a harder time with safety and protection. So that might be why my nervous system isn't, that I have trouble sometimes regulating it. So how much regulation is needed to develop healthy attachment? Well, honestly, it really depends. There are biological factors. We talked a little bit about your home environment, your genetics, and, temperament is a big part of your nervous system. We all have different temperaments. We also might have family history of like more prone to depression, more prone to anxiety. So all these factors will impact your ability to self-regulate. Now, the high sensitivity is something I like to talk about too, because people who have a higher sensitivity to emotions tend to be very empathic people. They tend to be very creative people. So it can also be a strength to have a heightened sensitivity to awareness and to your emotions, but those people too often have to work harder to self-regulate because they feel things more intensely and deeply. But I also think of it as a strength. Many people go into creative fields, they become therapists, who have this heightened sensitivity. So it's not always, not a positive sign. It's just something you have to work with if you know that you have a heightened sensitivity to emotions. And obviously external stressors in our environment, trauma, stress, can really impact our ability to self-regulate. Before I go to that, though, I do want to talk a little bit about, the GNE diagnosis and the stress that also puts on family members and the patient. So that also is something that, we have to be mindful of, that when you have a progressive disease, that can put a lot of stress on the family system and the individual who's experienced it. So that is why I really felt compelled to talk more in detail about this. So nervous system dysregulation. This is when we are in that sympathetic nervous system where we're constantly feeling dysregulated. We feel we don't have control on how we respond to triggers. We might remain stuck in a response even when that trigger is removed. And we know when our nervous system is chronically dysregulated, our bodies develop various symptoms and conditions, and I don't need to I'll go into a little bit of detail, but when you're constantly dysregulated and you have a lack of sleep, let's say, you have anxiety, stress, lack of routine, maybe toxic environment, trauma, lack of self-care, maybe eating processed food, overworking, not setting boundaries, not, listening to your body might have trouble self-regulating. And when it has trouble self-regulating, you can obviously have suppress your immune system, makes it harder to fight off illness. Your muscles may become more tense. You might be more susceptible to pain and migraines. Your digestive system might be active during stress that could lead to unpleasant side effects such as, bloating and diarrhea. So for all these reasons, it's really important to work on nervous system regulation. Obviously, GNE, as I said, can be a form of trauma, puts a lot of stress on the body and the mind to cope with this diagnosis, to make sense of it, what it means and how to accept it. And it's also something that's unpredictable. So it's really important to look at how you handle your stress and how you take care of your nervous system. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happens with our nervous system. And I talked about the sympathetic nervous system. And that is when there's two ways of dealing with stress that your body responds. There's the hyperarousal state, which is when you feel intense anxiety. You might have a startle response. You might have some hypervigilance where you're scanning your environment, looking for threats. You might have an inability to relax. You might have some digestive problems. You might feel this emotional flooding or chronic pain. And this is when you're hyper-aroused state. And the reason that it's in red, which I'm going to kind of talk about throughout this presentation, is because I want people to think of like their heart rate is up and it's accelerated. So it's like hot, let's say, like when we're talking of feeling like a sense of hotness in the body, okay? And then the other flip side is when the body shuts down, and that's kind of when you feel exhausted, maybe disconnected, and your blood pressure drops. So what you really want to do is we have this optimal arousal here. You want to see how you can spend more time in this optimal arousal place. So there's that hyperarousal state, and then there's the hypoarousal state. And I think it's important that some people are more prone to experience more hyperarousal, or they might be more prone to experience hypoarousal. So this is just ways to define it. And I'm going to go to this next slide, which is going to talk a little bit about the hyperarousal and the hypoarousal, and when you're dysregulated. They're both forms of dysregulation. And I love this concept about the window of tolerance. This was developed by Dan Siegel, and he really talks about how do we spend more time in that optimal window of tolerance, where we can stay calm, focused, alert, we can handle the stress, we can be in that place to manage our nervous system. And clearly you see the hyperarousal where it's like red, it feels like hot, and people are feeling overwhelmed. And again, that's kind of a heightened state, where the hyperarousal is more in the shutdown mode, and it feels probably more cold and detached. So we're going to talk a little bit more in what this hyperaroused looks like. And again, the reason I'm doing this is I really want to help people understand this from different perspectives. Is this hyperaroused state is really the fight or flight response. And you don't want to spend too much time in that for all the reasons we talked about. And this is when you have, the anxiety, you feel overwhelmed, you have maybe outbursts of emotional and aggressive outbursts. You might have some anger and rage. You might have some obsessive behaviors, overeating, addictions. That's kind of what happens when you're in this hyperaroused state and you're not able to bring your body and self-regulate and self-soothe. And then again, it talks about the hypoaroused state, where you feel a disconnect. Maybe you're out going through the motions. It's like on autopilot. You might feel kind of shut down and lethargic and just have very low energy. So again, we are trying to find this window of tolerance and how people can stay more in this window of tolerance. And people's window of tolerance fluctuates. Some people might have a pretty wide zone, and some people have a narrow zone based on what they're dealing with at the given moment in time. So I think what I would like people to do is to look at this window of tolerance awareness worksheet. And the reason I love using this, and I use this for a lot of my clients, to kind of look at how their body responds to stress. And then we can, if we deal with how the body responds, I think then we're more equipped to deal with the emotions and the thoughts later. But when someone's dysregulated, as many of you know, it's really hard to kind of think about things in a rational, thoughtful way. So that is why we really need to focus on what can we do when we're in these states of either hyperarousal or hypoarousal. So the first thing is important is to pay attention to your symptoms. Focus on your emotional and physical responses in your body. Think about what you're feeling. What are you doing that might have caused your body to react? And we really want to help, build the awareness. So the first thing is to look at this list for everybody. And I want everyone to pay attention to their symptoms, and then where they feel it in their body. Identify the symptoms you experience. And when you're identifying the symptoms you experience, think about again where you feel it is in your body. And then I want people to look at the distress level they have from a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being mildly distressing to 5 being super distressing. So I think these are all the more common states of hyperarousal and the symptoms people might be feeling. And then the hypoarousal too are also, and people can add their own response if it's not listed there. But maybe what I think would be helpful is people just look at this list, pick a few that they are more prone to, and maybe, put it on a scale from 1 to 5, how significant it is, because you're trying to create some awareness of what kind of symptoms you're more prone to. And if you can identify these symptoms, you'll kind of know, okay, this is what I'm prone to. And then you'll have a better understanding of how to manage it and regulate it. And ultimately, it would be great if you could start identifying the cause that puts you in this dysregulated state. Because sometimes we can avoid those situations if we know what the cause is, or we're just better equipped and prepared to know that that could be a triggering event that will cause this hyperarousal or hypoarousal or dysregulated state. So you're just more equipped and have the tools to manage it. So if people can just take a few minutes, let's see what time it is, 9:23, at least it is on the this in California, but I know it's other time zones, other places. But if people can just take about 3 to 5 minutes to look at this list and identify what you feel you're most prone to, and rate it from a scale from, again, 1 to 5. Okay, I hope everybody's had the opportunity to identify what they feel that they're most prone to. And again, that is really the first step of looking at your nervous system and what responses that you tend to have more frequently. So, as I said, like, part of what's important is the awareness, being attuned that this is how your body responds to stress. And then we're going to learn how to regulate, how to bring yourself back to that window of tolerance, that calm state. Clearly, this is something that if you do more frequently, you can learn how to kind of reverse some of the damage of your automatic response to stress. It's obviously going to take some practice, but if people can learn how to implement some of these things, they hopefully will see a significant change in the way they experience stress. You want to expand your capacity, as I said, to cope with stress and manage and self-regulate. And it's also important, obviously, to feel connected and have supportive relationships with others and within the world around us to help us on this journey of self-regulation. So all of these things will be helpful in healing your nervous system and things to be aware of. So now that you've identified those things, we're going to talk about self-regulation. So what's really important with self-regulation is we really want to look at how to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. And as I said in the beginning of the presentation, the parasympathetic nervous system is your body's response. It's the brake pedal to say the threat's no longer there. You are safe, and it's going to, there's ways to kick that in if your body doesn't do it naturally. And for a lot of people who are under a tremendous amount of stress, it's super difficult at times to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And you stay in that stress response even when the threat's gone. And you can experience, as we identified in the window of tolerance worksheet, you might have those ongoing symptoms. So how are you going to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system? Well, the vagus nerve is a very, and many people probably already have known this if you do meditation and other things that help restore the nervous system. But the vagus nerve can really help if we stimulate that, reduce your experience to stress. It will help reduce your heart rate and your blood pressure. It will, influence the emotional part of your brain, the limbic system. It will help with digestion and an increase of overall well-being. And if you practice stimulating your vagus nerve to relieve anxiety, to relieve stress, you can help so that buildup doesn't become too much. And again, this is something that needs practice. It's not a one size fits all. And I think it's really important that this is something that you begin to try out and identify things that might work for you, but it's not something you can try once and be like, oh, it didn't work, so I'm moving on. So I wanted to explain a little bit about the science behind this. So hopefully I can get people's buy-in. There is a lot about neuroscience, evidence that this actually really works, because you're actually working with the part of your brain to decrease arousal and get back to a more regulated state. So now, if you identified things that when you were hypo-aroused, and that means when you've had the elevated anxiety, the racing thoughts, the much more activated, you're hyper aroused. You want to be able to bring down that heart rate. You want to find ways, and I did it in blue because you want to find a way to cool off your nervous system. Now, so I did it in blue so people can really look at things that bring the temperature down to cool off, okay? Now, breathing, I know people, this is, everyone's like, take a breath. It's more of like deep breathing, and you want to send oxygen and blood to your nervous system. It's the quickest way to calm down your nervous system. So it's important to sit in a comfortable place, inhale through your nose, expanding your abdomen and your chest, and exhale completely through your mouth, through your nose, lungs, and belly. And it's really the quickest way to calm down when you're that activated, okay? Deep breathing. A weighted blanket, a lot of my clients seem to like the feeling of being held and contained with a weighted blanket that gives them a sense of calm. So that's another thing that activates the parasympathetic nervous system. My favorite really is the cold water. Whenever you're feeling a sense of intense emotions, the cold water, whether it's a cold plunge, a cold shower, ice packs, cold drinks, ice cube, can immediately quickly reset your nervous system. And the other thing too, I'm a big fan of music and singing and chanting. And the reason that works is because the vagus nerve is really close to your ear. So vocal stimulation is one of the quickest ways also to transition from dysregulation. And I was just thinking about this the other day. I was in the car and I was actually playing, and music too. Music also has been shown to introduce, to induce the parasympathetic response. And we all know that listening to music, the vibrations, the sounds in the eardrums, they travel to the vagus nerve. It helps with basically choosing the right music will stimulate your vagus nerve and stimulate a more parasympathetic response to put you in a more regulated state. So I was just going to use this example because I was in the car the other day and I love Elton John, and I was like, oh, I'm listening to Elton John, and I was singing and I was listening to music, and I recognized how much better I felt in that moment. And I was just even moving around. I mean, dancing is always good, moving your body in a way that you can. And I noticed how much I felt calm and better and energized. So I think those are great things to think about. And even I've noticed my daughter, and I never really kind of noticed this. I mean, a lot of us do this in our environment. We don't realize why it's working, and it's just important to be aware of it. Is when she takes the shower, she brings her speaker and she plays music and she sings in the shower. And I honestly say she comes out of the shower and she's usually in a pretty good mood. And I think it's because her vagus nerve is being stimulated, and the music, the cold water or the hot water, whatever she's feeling in that moment, energizes her. And it seems like it's really useful. So music is one of my favorites. And also, aromatherapy can be really, really useful too. Bergamot and lavender have shown to have beneficial effects on stress reduction. I also really work with grounding, and I want to talk a little bit about that technique. And that is ability when you're actually feeling really anxious and maybe even feel like you might be having a panic attack, is to really kind of get yourself in the present moment. So sometimes in those moments, just identifying 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can touch, and 1 thing you can taste. Because what you're trying to do is get your other senses in your body activated, so you're not feeling this panic that you're experiencing. So you want to get your body in the present moment. So grounding can really be helpful. That's a grounding technique. Even looking around and naming specific items, in your environment of the same color. Those are all grounding techniques to bring you to a more regulated state. Nature, as we know, just outside, nature and vitamin D helps increase serotonin levels, which are responsible for our mood. Going into nature has been studied, obviously, to be a therapeutic method for reducing blood pressure and relaxation, and listening to the calming sounds of nature can be really useful. I love journaling. I think it's a great way to clear your mind when you're having like racing thoughts where you're overthinking. I love it. I call it like mind dumping. It's like just put all that on paper. It helps you reset your thoughts. It can sometimes make it difficult to deal with emotions, and you can revisit it later, but just have it be somewhere where it's released and you can revisit it later if you feel the need to. Somatic experiencing. This is, there are some people that work specifically on this. It's a gentle way it's gentle touch with a professional that can help discharge stress that gets stuck in a body. So there are somatic therapists that really work closely in releasing stress in the body. Obviously, acupuncture stimulates the vagus nerve. It helps decrease inflammation and increases your system functioning. And for many people, the act of getting acupuncture can be very relaxing and meditative. I'm I know so many of the patients love meditation, and I know why, because it really helps in managing triggers. It helps with breathing. It decreases your heart rate and your blood pressure. It helps with muscles and lactic acid, and it's really good for pain management for a lot of people. And massage, I know a lot of patients really feel that massage has been helpful in dealing with pain, and it also is really resetting your nervous system. Fractals, I mean, these are these geometric shapes that people look that have a repetitive nature. And even that can have kind of a hypnotic state that can bring your nervous system down. Obviously, cuddling, with a human being or a pet, that releases the happiness hormones and chemicals in the brain, such as serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. And we know oxytocin is the love and bonding chemical. So these are really things to kind of reset your nervous system. I looked at these, you can use them when you're dysregulated, but these I think are good when you're hyper aroused and you want to bring down the temperature. So then we're going to go to the things to increase your arousal. And that's when you want to increase your heart rate, when you're lethargic and you're feeling you have no energy, and you want to activate your senses so you don't feel so stuck and low energy and shut down. And this is kind of like the freeze or fawn response when you're just like checked out. So these are things you want to stimulate your nervous system. So scents are good for this too. Lemon oil and peppermint oil can increase your heart rate. They can help with energy, focus, and concentration. Sometimes people find praying puts people in a much more of that rest and digest mode, which is the parasympathetic response, lowering anxiety and taking us to a more peaceful state. If you can do some form of mild exercise, and I know this is hard for patients, but this really helps increase your heart rate, stimulates the vagus nerve, any kind of movement that you can do. I know it's complicated for a lot of people that have this disease based on where they are on their progression, but anything you can do to help, because it obviously even helps with digestion and your gut health. Again, massages, even massaging the area around your neck, because that can help stimulate the vagus nerve. And gargling, they say, in the back of your throat can really be useful too. Even the act of yawning can be helpful. They say, crunchy food also, there's something about that releases tension from your jaw, face, and neck just by the act of crunching. Warm, soothing foods, hot shower, even that can help increase your heart rate. If you can take a hot shower, if you can run your hands over, hot water, sometimes even eating warm, soothing foods like, soups and tea, hot chocolate, and even like a heating pad obviously can be helpful in kind of increasing your to activate, to feel more, increasing your heart rate and increasing your arousal. Rocking chairs, I don't know if anybody feels comfortable using those, but it does activate the parasympathetic nervous system. It can be good for pain management. It's not a surprise. And when a child's upset, that they sometimes like to be rocked because it's a way to kind of soothe the body. Again, weighted blankets can be helpful. Again, listening to mood elevating music could really, really help. That would activate and get you energized and kind of lift up hopefully your spirits. So these are all sample activities. I mean, people can look through some of these things and go, oh, I've already done that. That might be why this has been useful for me, and maybe I need to do more of it, because I do notice that I feel better. Like kind of when I told you about me listening to Elton John the other day, I was like, that did help me feel better. I need to do that more often whenever I'm not in a great mindset. So just being aware of these things and being aware of how your body responds is really, really important, because I've gotten your buy-in to hopefully want to do more of this when you see that it can actually help reset your nervous system and put you in a more balanced state so you can handle the stressors that come your way. So I also like to have this portable trigger kit for people that sometimes they don't have access to these things right in the moment, they're not home. So some of the things that I think could be useful is candied ginger, sour candy that seems to help reset the nervous system. Even touching and activate, because that's their sense of taste, obviously, with the candied ginger and the sour candy, but even activating your touch, any kind of raw crystal or jagged item, can maybe help. Rubber bands against the wrist can help. If you can have a mini instant cold pack on you that you can use when you're out and about and you're feeling distressed, to be able to use that. And I know for a lot of patients, when they're out and outside of the house, it sometimes is stressful because they're encountering challenges and there's mobility issues and concerns about how they navigate their environment. So I think if you are nervous to go out in the world and you're worried about if you're going to get anxious, to have these things at your disposal. Peppermint oil too can be really useful as well. So these are more portable things that I like people to think about. Now, part of what I'm really hoping is if you get your nervous system more regulated and you are in that more balanced state and you can deal with these intense emotions that happen, that you will be more equipped to deal with your emotions and thoughts when you're in this more balanced state. The emotions that stick, we feel like these emotions last a lot longer, but emotions move in our body within 60 to 90 seconds. They usually experience. It's the thoughts and the stories that we carry that linger much, much longer. And, next time you feel like a big emotion, such as anger, sadness, overwhelm, or joy, try to notice it, breathe through it, pay attention on how it affects your body and where it sits and how long. And then you can notice your thoughts and attach the thoughts that you attach to those emotions. Most of these things pass. Your body is designed to process these experiences, but I really hope that people will think about their nervous system in maybe a different way and try to be more self-aware of what are the triggers that they have and how their body responds and what things they're willing to try in their environment to help bring them back to that balanced state. And I do think it's really important to avoid this, oh my God, I want to fix it right away, because none of these things will be fixed right away as far as how you regulate. It's something that is a lifelong journey. You have to learn how to put it into practice. And by doing this, you'll slowly learn to regulate your nervous system, and hopefully your mind will then slow down and you'll feel more equipped to manage stress. And I'm very aware that a lot of patients are under a lot of stress. So I think it's really important to try to use these tools to be hopefully ways to help you feel more regulated. So I know we're going to take the questions soon, but just to recap, I just wanted to talk about the takeaways. Obviously, nervous systems are complex. Everybody has a different nervous system and it's maybe more susceptible to to having more regulation based on genetic factors and all the things we talked about. And when you were able, hopefully, to identify how you feel dysregulation in your body, and that hopefully will help you build some self-awareness, and that you can hopefully identify and ultimately implement strategies during times of dysregulation so you can restore balance and hopefully feel like you're more effectively able to self-regulate, and that you can learn new ways to rejuvenate your nervous system by incorporating some of these techniques into your daily routine. And I really hope through practice, that many of you can start to rewire your automatic responses to stress and activating events. So thank you for listening. And I want people to know if you have any questions about this presentation, there's my email. Feel free to reach out to me. And I think many of you know that, people can reach out and have sessions. Everyone can have one complimentary session per year, and that's for patients as well as family members. And I really try to kind of incorporate what might be useful for you. So I'm hoping that some people found this useful, and I'm ready to take some questions and hopefully be able to answer them.
Thank you, Carol, for that presentation. It was very informative, and I think a lot of us will find it very useful. Some of the activities seem to be things that we're already sometimes doing without the intention of regulating our nervous system, but it's just, as you say, our body is made to process these emotions, and it's so amazing that there's so many different ways that we can apply to do it. So I know there's somebody who's has a raised hand. So if you could write down your question on the questions and answer box, then we can read it and answer it. And I'm going to start with this question first. From your experience, which of all these activities seem to be more effective with your clients?
Well, I think the ones that can come quickly top of mind is when you're hyper aroused, and that's when you're feeling hot. Anything that will quickly lower the temperature. So think of cold, anything cold. So that, I think, is just easier because it's more top of mind, and people are like, oh, I'm feeling hot, I got to bring down the temperature. So get anything cold, cold water, cold drinks, go outside if it's cold, if you can, touch ice cubes, ice packs. That, I think, is easily to be, it's more top of mind, it's easy to remember. And then when you're feeling, again, the hypo aroused, when you're feeling lethargic and you're just feeling like you have no energy, you want to bring up the temperature. So you want to apply heat. So anything that involves heat, hot drinks, hot towels, heating pad, anything that will help elevate the temperature in your body to bring you back to a balanced state. So I like those because those are things that people can remember with the hot and cold. So that's the one probably is one of my favorites. I mean, there's many, and of course, everyone's individual, and some patients respond really well to music, others respond better to touch, some respond well to temperatures. So this is about you learning your body and learning what works for you.
Awesome. We have another question, the people wants to know if they can have access to the list of activities that they could try.
Ooh, hold on. Yes, I can put, I know I had it on the screen. I will have it written up so people can actually have access. And I also will probably keep that window of tolerance worksheet so people can look at it later, where you are able to identify the symptoms and the level of distress. And then I can also make sure people have a copy of the sample activities that I put down on paper so people can keep it and use it when they think it's could be valuable for them.
Yeah, I think that'll be very helpful because it was a long list. I got to write down some of them, but yeah, I like to try different ones at different times. Sometimes some things work better than others at different circumstances, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll make sure that when this becomes a recorded presentation, that those attachments are included in that, so people can have access to them.
Awesome. So remember, then the presentation will be available in the website eventually, the recording, and also a part of the presentation for us to apply some of these tools in our life. Do
we have any?
Continue? Any more questions? I think there's somebody who has a question, but it's not showing yet on the questions and answer box.
Okay.
So,
well, that person can feel free. There's my email below. It's cgelbard@lcsw@caregne.org. You can feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions people might have about the presentation or even just in general. And I really am glad that I got to present on this today, and I hope some people found it useful.
Yeah, I think we definitely will. I think for patients and also for some of us who are their caregivers or care partners, I think we all go through situations where we need to regulate our nervous system. And I think particularly for my husband, it's been very helpful to practice a lot of breathing. And the longer, as you say, the longer you practice some of these activities, it becomes much easier to keep the nervous system regulated and within a window of tolerance that allows you to cope much better with stressors. And indeed, the more you practice it, I think it becomes much more powerful.
Yes, absolutely. And I think sometimes I hoped I got people's buy-in because there is science that shows you can activate your vagus nerve and your parasympathetic response if you do these things. And that hopefully, here's my dog. See, I'm going to have my dog, even just touching him and petting him is kind of a way to reset your system. But anyhow, more putting those into your daily routine. I hope people have saw that there's a lot of positive benefits to doing it. As you said, Lisette, like it's just more of making it a priority and recognizing it's not just self-care, it's self-care for your nervous system, for your body. Because then if you're able to do that, you're more equipped to handle the emotions and the thoughts and the stresses that come your way because you found ways to ground yourself and bring you back to a more balanced state. So hopefully people will realize, hey, God, give themselves permission to do more of these things because they really do help.
Thank you, Carol. It's been really, really helpful presentation. And I'm looking forward to the next presentations we'll have this year, 2023, on the speaker series. And remember, you can keep yourself updated about the next presentations going to the NDF's website. And thank you for attending this webinar, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Carol.
Sure. Thank you, everyone.